The European Union has agreed to impose fresh sanctions against Syria, despite UN observers being on the ground to monitor the ceasefire in the country. EU ambassadors endorsed the measures ahead of a meeting of foreign ministers in Luxembourg. The new round of the EU sanctions has already drawn a strong condemnation from Russia. Moscow says such sanctions are unacceptable from the point of view of international law. Meanwhile, the UN observers continue monitoring the implementation of the peace plan put forth by UN Arab League envoy Kofi Annan. The initiative is aimed at halting the year-long deadly unrest in the Arab nation. Mimi Al-Laham is a Syrian activist joining me now via Skype from Dubai to share her thoughts with us on this. Mimi, the new and separate US and the European Union sanctions against Syria come as the UN observers are in the country to monitor a ceasefire there, and this is raising fresh doubts about their intentions in Syria. Do you think countries like the US, the EU, Saudi Arabia and Qatar want a peaceful resolution to the crisis in Syria?
I don't believe they want a peaceful resolution. I believe that they, in fact, have been since the beginning undermining peace in Syria. And even when the Annan peace plan was instated, they have come out and pledged openly that they will provide money and funding to the Syrian rebels and or insurgents, you might call them. So they've placed their position clear. They do not want to see peace in Syria. They want to see regime fall, and they want to have their own puppets replace the current regime, who have been waiting in Turkey, and they go by the name of the Syrian National Council. So no, I don't believe that they want peace in Syria, and I believe currently their actions show this. And I also believe that the ceasefire plan altogether was an excuse to make the Syrian government look like it has broken UN resolution and to bring in UN sanctions against Syria. And these EU sanctions have just been another step in that direction.
So you're saying, Mimi, that since the beginning, in your words, they've tried to undermine peace. How have they tried to do that, if you can be more specific on that?
Well, there's been a lot of funding from the country Qatar to these insurgent groups. Qatar is an ally of the US and NATO and Israel and Saudi Arabia. These countries are forming the alliance against Syria, and these countries have helped undermine peace. Specifically, Turkey has allowed Syrian insurgents and foreign insurgents, not from Syria but fighting in Syria, to use their country and their border as a base for their assaults. And of course, the US has supported the insurgency both monetarily and by using their political clout, verbally and with the deals that they have made. So all the evidence is admitted by these countries themselves.
And finally, Saudi Arabia and Qatar, they've been backing the crackdown against anti-regime protests in Bahrain. At the same time, they've been giving weapons to the armed groups in Syria to fight the government, openly saying that these groups should be given equipment and assistance. So do you see this as a contradiction?
I see it as a complete hypocrisy. You know, in the meantime, when the Syrian people have made their position clear that they do not support this insurgency, as it has been 13 months and there has been no mass rallies as we saw the likes of in Egypt. But what we have seen are mass rallies in support of the reform process and in support of the government. So the Syrian people's position has been made clear, and yet Saudi Arabia and Qatar have been funding this insurgency in Syria. And at the same time, they have been crushing a grassroots freedom movement in Bahrain, and they have intervened inside Bahrain militarily, Saudi Arabia is now currently occupying Bahrain. So for Bahrain, it's no longer just a fight for freedom, it's also a fight for sovereignty. So it's complete hypocrisy for both Saudi Arabia, which does not have freedom for itself, to talk about freedom for Syria, and at the same time, it's a complete hypocrisy for the U.S. media to completely ignore one grassroots revolution and to concentrate on an insurgency and completely ignore the other one.
Mimi Al-Laham, a Syrian activist, joining us there via Skype from Dubai. Thank you very much. Well, in Syria, preparations are being made for parliamentary elections. Candidates have been publishing their plans to attract people's votes. Syrians hope the new parliament will be much more active, especially now that more powers are given to parliamentarians, according to the new constitution. Muhammad Ali is in Damascus.